Life lessons you need to learn before it's too late. Stoic mindset. There is a version of you that never got hurt. A version of you that never made the wrong choice. A version of you that never wasted years chasing the wrong people, the wrong dreams, the wrong version of yourself. But that version of you doesn't exist. And the Stoics, those ancient philosophers who walked through wars, exile, poverty, and loss, they understood something most people spend their entire lives refusing to accept. Pain is not the enemy. Wasted time is. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, I want you to know, this is not a feel-good space. This is a space for people who are ready to think deeply, live intentionally, and build something real. Today, we are going deep. We are going to walk through the most powerful life lessons the ancient Stoics left behind. Lessons that most people never encounter until they are standing at the edge of their life, looking back, full of regret. You don't have to be that person. Stay with me. Every word of what I'm about to share has the power to change how you see yourself, how you spend your time, and how you build the rest of your life. And before we begin, if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, do it right now. Hit that subscribe button. Because everything we talk about here, the mindset, the philosophy, the daily practices, this is the kind of content that can genuinely reshape your life. New videos go up regularly. You don't want to miss what's coming. Let's begin. Lesson 1. Stop waiting for life to begin. Most people are living in a permanent state of later. Later, I'll start the business. Later, I'll have the conversation. Later, I'll pursue what I actually want. Later, I'll be happy. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men who ever lived, a man who commanded armies and governed an empire, wrote this to himself in his private journal. Confine yourself to the present. He didn't write that for the public. He wrote it as a reminder to himself. Because even he, with all his power and wisdom, had to consciously fight the human tendency to delay living. The Stoics called this the greatest theft, the theft of the present moment. They believe that most human suffering comes not from what is happening to us right now, but from our obsession with the future that hasn't arrived, or our grief over a past that cannot be changed. Think about how much of your mental energy right now is spent in one of those two places, the past or the future. If you're honest, it's probably most of it. The Stoics weren't telling you to ignore planning or to pretend the past didn't happen. They were saying something far more radical. The only place where life actually occurs is now. Every moment you spend truly present is a moment of real living. Everything else is a rehearsal or a replay. Here is the practical application. Take one thing you have been postponing. One thing you keep saying, later to. And ask yourself, with brutal honesty, what is the actual cost of waiting? Not the imagined cost of failure. The actual, measurable cost of not starting. Because here is the truth the Stoics knew, you will never be ready. There is no magical moment of readiness waiting for you down the road. Readiness is built through action, not waiting. Start now. Start imperfectly. Start afraid. But start. Lesson 2. Your reputation with yourself is everything. We live in an era obsessed with public image. Social media has turned human beings into personal brand managers, constantly curating how they appear to others. But the Stoics were obsessed with something else entirely, your private reputation. The one you build with yourself. Epictetus, a man who was born a slave, who had no power over anything in his external world, said this. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. He understood something that most people who have every advantage in the world never grasp. The most important relationship in your life is the relationship between who you say you are and who you actually are when no one is watching. Every time you make a promise to yourself and break it, you are quietly telling your own subconscious mind, I cannot be trusted. And once that seed is planted, it grows into something devastating, a deep, persistent belief that you are not capable of change, not worthy of success, not someone who follows through. The Stoics built their entire philosophy around a concept called virtue, and virtue, to them, was not a performance. It was not about what you posted or what you said at dinner parties. Virtue was about the alignment between your values and your actions when the only witness was yourself. This is the work that most people avoid, because it is far easier to perform goodness publicly than to practice it privately. Here is your challenge. Identify one promise you have made to yourself and broken. Just one. And this week, keep it. Not because anyone will see. Because you will see. And the version of you that watches your every move needs to learn that you can be trusted again. That is how self-respect is rebuilt. Not through motivation. Not through willpower. But through small, consistent acts of private integrity. Lesson 3. Pain is a teacher, not a punishment. When something goes wrong in your life, and it will, the natural human instinct is to ask, why is this happening to me? It's a question drenched in victimhood. And the Stoics weren't interested in victimhood, not because they were harsh or cold, but because they understood that the why me question leads nowhere useful. The question the Stoics asked instead was, what is this making me capable of? Seneca, one of the wealthiest, most influential men in Rome, who lost everything multiple times throughout his life, wrote, "It is not that I am brave. It is that I know what is worth fearing." He had faced exile. He had faced poverty. He had faced the threat of death under a paranoid emperor. And each time, he came out on the other side not broken, but deepened. The Stoics believed that hardship was not something life did to you. It was something life did for you. Not in a naive, everything happens for a reason kind of way. But in a deeply practical sense, difficulty is the only training ground for character. You cannot develop patience without encountering situations that test your patience. You cannot develop courage without facing fear. You cannot develop compassion without experiencing loss. Every painful thing that has happened in your life has been offering you something. The tragedy is not the pain, the tragedy is receiving the pain and refusing the lesson. Think of the hardest thing you've been through. Not to relive it, but to ask, who did that experience make you? What did it teach you that nothing else could have? What strength do you carry now that you didn't have before? That is not spinning suffering into something positive. That is extracting what is real and valuable from an experience that cost you dearly. The Stoics insisted that nothing that happens to a person of good character is truly wasted. Nothing you have been through is wasted, unless you refuse to learn from it. Lesson 4. The tyranny of other people's opinions. Let me ask you something personal. How many decisions in your life have been quietly shaped by the fear of what someone else might think? How many conversations have you avoided? How many paths have you not taken? How many versions of yourself have you hidden? Because of other people's imagined opinions. Notice I said imagined. Because in most cases, the people you are afraid of judging you are far too consumed by their own fear of judgment to spend significant time judging you. Epictetus wrote something that should be carved into the wall of every home, every school, every workplace. Men are disturbed not by the things that happen, but by the opinions about the things. This is one of the foundational insights of Stoic philosophy. The external world does not have the power to disturb you. Only your interpretation of the external world has that power. And what is the opinion of others, if not an external event entirely outside your control? Someone thinks poorly of you. They judge your choices. They whisper behind your back. They post something unkind. And if you give that opinion the power to determine how you feel about yourself, you have handed your most precious possession, your peace of mind, to someone who probably doesn't deserve to hold it. Now, the Stoics were not saying to disregard all feedback. They were not saying to become arrogant and unteachable. They were saying that feedback from people of wisdom and good character, given with care, that is worth receiving. But the reflexive judgment of strangers, the approval seeking from people who don't know you, the anxiety about how you are perceived, that is a prison you have built for yourself. The practical release from this prison is simple, though not easy. Make your decisions based on your values, not on your audience. Ask not, what will people think? But, what does the person I am trying to become do in this moment? Live by that question long enough, and you will discover something remarkable. The people worth keeping in your life will respect you more. And the people who leave because you stopped performing for them? They were never really there for you in the first place. Lesson 5. Time is the only currency that cannot be earned back. Marcus Aurelius lost children. He lost friends. He lost generals he admired. He sat with dying people throughout his life and watched the greatest, most powerful, most gifted human beings he knew simply stop. And from all of that, he wrote this: "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." We are all terminal. Every single person watching this video right now is operating on borrowed time, and nobody knows the balance remaining in the account. Not you. Not me. Not the most advanced medical technology in the world. The Stoics practiced something called memento mori, the contemplation of death. Not morbidly. Not with depression. But as a clarifying exercise. Because when you hold the truth of your mortality clearly in mind, something remarkable happens. The trivial things lose their power over you. The argument with a colleague. The embarrassment of failing in public. The petty jealousy. The years spent in a career that drains the life from you. The relationship you've outgrown but are afraid to leave. When you hold the reality of your finite time clearly, these things begin to dissolve. And what remains is a set of much more important questions. What do I actually want to do with the time I have? Who actually matters to me? What am I building? What am I leaving behind? These are not comfortable questions. The Stoics never promise comfort. They promise clarity. And clarity, even when it is uncomfortable, is the beginning of a real life. Here is the exercise. Imagine you are 80 years old, looking back. Not the 80-year-old version of you who lived cautiously, played it safe, deferred everything that mattered. The version of you who lived fully, took the risks, had the hard conversations, built something real. What did that person do differently? Start doing that now. Lesson 6. Desire is not the problem, undisciplined desire is. One of the great misunderstandings about Stoicism is that it requires you to become emotionless. To strip away desire. To become a kind of philosophical robot unmoved by the world. That is not Stoicism. That is a caricature of it. What the Stoics actually taught was something far more nuanced. Desire is natural and human, but desire that you cannot master will master you. Seneca wrote, "Omnia aliena sunt, tempus tantum nostrum est." Everything is foreign to us, time alone is ours. The Stoics recognize that human beings are built for wanting. We want connection, meaning, achievement, pleasure, love. There is nothing wrong with any of those desires in their right form. The problem arises when desire becomes attachment, when your peace of mind becomes conditional on getting what you want. When you cannot be at rest until you achieve a specific outcome. When your happiness is held hostage by an external result. This is the distinction Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus and Seneca all return to again and again, the difference between preferred indifference, things that are nice to have, worth pursuing, but not necessary for your fundamental well-being, and the things that actually constitute a good life, which are entirely internal, your values, your character, your response to what happens to you. In practical terms, this means, work hard toward what you want. Pursue excellence. Set ambitious goals. Chase meaningful outcomes. But hold the outcomes loosely. Do your best and then release the result. Because the person who can work with full effort and then accept whatever comes with full equanimity, that person is unbreakable. That person cannot be diminished by failure. That person cannot be made bitter by disappointment. That is the freedom the Stoics were pointing toward. Not the freedom to always get what you want. The freedom to be okay, deeply, genuinely okay, whether you get it or not. Lesson 7. The people around you are your destiny. Epictetus said something that sounds almost harsh when you first hear it. He said, "Tell me who you spend time with and I'll tell you who you'll become." Now, I want you to think carefully about the 5 to 10 people who take up the most space in your daily life. Not just the people you love. The people who occupy your mental energy, who you talk to, who you think about, whose opinions shape your own, whose moods affect your mood, whose ambitions or lack of ambition defines the cultural water you swim in every day. Who are those people? And here is the harder question. Are those people pulling you toward the person you want to become, or away from them? The Stoics were deeply intentional about community. They believed that your environment, especially your human environment, was one of the most powerful forces shaping your character. Not through dramatic single moments, but through the slow, invisible accumulation of daily exposure. If you spend your days surrounded by people who complain, you will gradually begin to see the world through a lens of complaint. If you spend your days around people who take responsibility, who pursue growth, who speak honestly and act with integrity, you will absorb those qualities almost without trying. This does not mean you abandon everyone who is struggling. The Stoics were not teaching elitism. They were teaching intentionality. It means you stop passively accepting the social environment you inherited and begin actively cultivating the one you need to become who you are meant to be. It may mean difficult conversations. It may mean spending less time with certain people. It may mean actively seeking out individuals who challenge and inspire you even when that feels uncomfortable or presumptuous. But the Stoics were clear: you cannot become more than your environment will allow. So if the life you want requires a different version of yourself, start by honestly examining whether the people around you are helping that version emerge. Lesson 8. Discipline is the highest form of self-love. We live in a culture that has confused self-love with self-indulgence. Rest when you want. Eat what you want. Skip what's hard. Avoid what's uncomfortable. And call it all self-care. The Stoics would have recognized this immediately as one of the most subtle and dangerous forms of self-betrayal. Marcus Aurelius, who woke before dawn every single day of his reign to write, to think, to prepare himself for the demands ahead, believed that discipline was not something you imposed on yourself from the outside. It was something you chose because you respected yourself enough to hold yourself to a higher standard. He wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." The gap between who you are and who you are capable of being, that gap is filled by one thing and one thing only: the daily practice of doing what needs to be done, regardless of how you feel about doing it. Feelings are unreliable guides to action. They change with the weather, with your sleep, with your blood sugar, with the news cycle. The Stoics understood that you cannot build a meaningful life on the foundation of how you feel in any given moment. You build it on what you have committed to. On the standard you hold yourself to on the days you feel worst. On the practices you maintain when no one is watching and nothing is rewarding you. Real self-love looks like this: choosing the difficult action that serves the person you are becoming, over the comfortable action that keeps you where you are. That is not cruelty. That is the deepest form of care, the recognition that the version of yourself capable of a truly good life is on the other side of the discomfort you keep avoiding. Lesson 9. Anger is almost never worth its price. Seneca wrote an entire treatise on anger. He was personally prone to it, and he knew it. He watched himself get pulled into fury and then spent his entire life analyzing what anger actually costs. His conclusion was devastating in its clarity. Anger is the only vice that takes pleasure in the pain of others, and that alone should be enough to make any reasonable person refuse it. The Stoics were not saying you should never feel anger. They were saying you should almost never act from it. Because anger, real fury, distorts your perception, damages your judgment, harms your relationships, and costs you far more than it ever delivers in satisfaction. Think about the last time you acted from anger. Not felt it, acted from it. What was the outcome? How did you feel the next day? What did it cost you in your relationships, your reputation, your own self-respect? The Stoics offered a practical technique: delay. When you feel anger rising, don't fight it and don't act on it. Simply create space between the feeling and your response. Even a 10-second pause. Even a single breath. Because in that space, your rational mind can re-enter the conversation and ask, is this worth what it will cost me? 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. The person who can feel anger fully and still choose their response deliberately, that person has an extraordinary power. Because so much of human behavior in moments of conflict is reactive, automatic, impulsive. The person who is not controlled by their anger has a significant advantage in every negotiation, every difficult relationship, every challenge that involves other human beings. Anger is expensive. The Stoics decided they couldn't afford it. That is a decision available to you right now. Lesson 10. The life well lived is built from small days. We are obsessed with transformation. Big breakthroughs. Defining moments. The dramatic turning point where everything changes. And those moments exist. But they are rare. And the Stoics knew, from hard experience, that they are almost never enough on their own. What builds a life is not the dramatic moment. It is the ordinary day, repeated hundreds and then thousands of times, with intention, with discipline, with presence. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations every single morning. Not for publication. Not to impress anyone. He wrote them as a private practice of mental training, reminding himself every single day of the principles he believed in, the person he was trying to be, the kind of emperor and father and husband and friend he wanted to be. Day after day after day. For years. And from that daily practice, from that relentless, unglamorous commitment to the work of becoming, came one of the greatest figures in human history. Not because of any single moment of genius or heroism, but because of the 10,000 ordinary mornings when he chose to do the work anyway. Your life will not be built in a moment of inspiration. It will be built in the ordinary Tuesday afternoons. In the Friday evenings when you could choose the easy thing or the meaningful thing. In the quiet, private moments when no one is watching and the only person you have to answer to is yourself. The Stoics believed in the extraordinary power of the ordinary day, lived with intention. This is your ordinary day. What will you do with it? The message that matters most. We have covered a great deal of ground together today. We have talked about the theft of the present moment. About the reputation you build with yourself in private. About pain as teacher. About the tyranny of other people's opinions. About your finite time and what to do with it. About desire, discipline, community, anger, and the small ordinary day. But I want to close with something that ties all of it together. The Stoics, every single one of them, from Zeno who founded the school to Marcus Aurelius who embodied it at the highest levels of power, believe the same thing. A good life is available to anyone, right now, regardless of their circumstances, their past, their failures, their resources. Not a perfect life. Not an easy life. A good life, one built on character, clarity, and intentional action. You don't need more time to start building that. You don't need different circumstances. You don't need someone's permission. You need to decide. And then act accordingly. Every day you have left is a gift that most people squander in distraction, fear, and the quiet agony of unlived potential. Not you. Not after today. The Stoics are not asking you to be superhuman. They are asking you to be genuinely human, aware, awake, and responsible for the one life you have been given. That life is yours. Honor it. Before you go, if this video meant something to you, if something in what we discussed today shifted something in how you see yourself or your life, I want to ask you one thing. Subscribe to this channel. Not as a favor to me, but because what we do here, this deep dive into Stoic philosophy, into timeless wisdom, into the kind of thinking that actually changes lives, this is ongoing work. And you deserve to be part of it. Every week, we go deeper. Every week, we bring more of these ancient lessons into the modern world in a way that is practical, honest, and real. Hit the subscribe button right now. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new video. And share this one with someone who needs to hear it, someone who is ready for a different way of seeing the world. This community is being built one intentional person at a time. I'm glad you're here. I'll see you in the next one.